Hello, Toastmasters. Welcome, guests. Tonight we heard a joke. For anyone who thinks a woman's place is in the kitchen, remember that's where the knives are kept. It's funny, isn't it? We love the image of a woman with a knife. It's kind of like, oh, you cute little woman, you're going to come attack me. It wasn't so funny when my mother, at 48, was teaching little David, who was 5, Duty, somebody comes at you with a knife, you always put it blade up. You know why? They go to knock it down, they cut themselves. So you're right. Woman's place is in the kitchen. It's where they keep the knives. It is a joke. It's also fact. It's also truth. We don't like to think of the fact that men can be victims of domestic violence. As a divorce lawyer who spent 15 years representing men, I've had many a man who's a batterer. I've had many a man who got angry and just backhanded his wife or his girlfriend. It's completely inexcusable. We all know you never hit a woman. Ever. It's unexcusable. And it is. And I'm not going to say here if there's a reason for it or trying to make an excuse for it. But I want to talk about the corollary of that. The documentary I'm doing is called What About the Men? Exploring the hidden side of domestic violence. Because just as it's totally inappropriate for a man to hit a woman, I think it's also inappropriate for a woman to hit a man. I think that's something we don't talk about. I think that we as a society hamstring men with 2 phrases. 1, never hit a woman. 2, if you get hit by a woman, well, couldn't you defend yourself? Yeah. What are you supposed to do with that? How do I defend myself when my attacker is always viewed as the victim? In this handout, that I don't know if all of you got, because I don't know if I made enough copies, to be honest. Actually, we have some of these. This was an institute of the National Center for Injury Prevention and Control, Division of Domestic Violence, put out by the National Intimate Partner in Sexual Violence Survey done in 2010. It's 124 pages. I did pick and choose some of the pages. But in it, it talks about the lifetime and 12-month prevalence of physical violence, just hand on face, intimate partner violence against men. Over the course of a lifetime, 25% of the victims of domestic violence are men. That's 1 out of 4. There are 20 men in this room. I know, I counted about 25 times. Who are the 5? Which 5? Which 5 have been beaten by their girlfriend? Hit by their mom? Which 5 have woken up to their wife hitting them over the head with a hairdryer? I know that stuff happens because it happens to my clients. I know that when they sit in my office and tell me these stories. And I asked the question, did you guys ever get violent? Did you ever get physically violent? He's like, yeah, well, you know, she hit the occasion, but it's not a big deal. I'm like, dude, that's domestic violence. That's abuse. Why didn't we go get a restraining order? Ah, dude, I can't do that. She's my kid's mom. Okay. I get it. Because that's one of the reasons why people stay in abusive relationships. When asked, why does a woman stay in an abusive relationship? He's my kid's dad. Well, we're family. I can't afford to leave. I'll lose custody of the kids. I'll never see my kids if I leave. If I get a restraining order against her, what kind of a man does that make me? And those are all the reasons why I'm doing this movie. What about the men exploring the hidden side of domestic violence? It's a talking head movie. It's 4 to 6 victims / survivors. We don't like to use the victim word with men. It doesn't resonate well with them. We go to survivors. Going to have a couple domestic violence shelter leaders. I've got executive directors lined up. I've got psychologists lined up. Psychologists that work in prisons who deal with battered men in prisons. Because here's a funny stat. 75% of the men in prison have a mental illness. Some form of mental health issue. Most of it because of domestic violence when they were kids. It's a big problem. We don't talk about it. The other chart that I gave you in this deals with lifetime prevalence of psychological aggression. That's the more insidious kind. That's the, what kind of a man are you that you have to get a restraining order against your wife? What kind of guy are you that you can't protect yourself against your woman? You don't make enough money, you're a loser. These are the reasons why I'm doing this movie. Because I want to bring to light that there's a lot of issues we need to talk about. Because domestic violence is not acceptable against women, and it's not acceptable against men.